Lights, camera, action.
Hi everybody, this is me, Queen Bee, and I am here with my good friends, Faye and Angie. And we're going to talk about quite a lot actually. We've got a lot packed in today, haven't we? We can talk about how we met, we're going to talk about your journey so far, and we're going to talk about how you two met, and about your relationship. So they're very kindly going to bear all. Yeah, did you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Just about.
I was at a party a few years ago, and I looked amazing. I had perfect makeup, perfect hair, and nobody would talk to me. So I sat there eating, which is my favourite hobby, and this tea girl walked past, and I'm like, "Oh, I like your dress," and she goes, "Yeah, I just got it in charity shop, £5." So I'm like, "Oh," and she goes, "No, you go." So we sat down, and that was it really, wasn't it? We started talking and complimented my makeup and said, "Have I ever thought of running a dressing service?" And I'm like, "No idea what that is." So once she told me, I was hooked, and that we did a trial makeup on you because I'd never done a male to female makeover before. Figured out I weren't that bad at it. And
With a few tips.
yeah, obviously, I mean it's completely different to doing a female makeover. So yeah, male to female is massively different. Saying that, I actually struggle doing female makeup now. So I'm so used to, with the haptic memories and everything, doing them male. Anyway, so we did that. A few days later, I had my first client. A couple of months later, moved house to make more room because it took over my life. And here we are. Several moves and an international back and forward for later.
8 years, I think.
7.
Yeah, 7, 8 this year, yeah.
Yep. And love it, absolutely changed my life, as I will tell everybody who listens. So, Faye, Ange, thank you very much. I know it's a big deal, it's also very private, but by talking about these things, of course I've left my phone on, by talking about these things, it helps other people coming up behind who maybe you can help. That's why we're doing these.
Yeah, of course.
So, over to you. What would you like to talk about?
So, I guess this is really about how our relationship works, because Angie's clearly cisgender. Have you ever been misgendered at B&O
no.
or anywhere else?
I have.
Good.
No,
I have.
I have lots.
No.
And about relationships in general, maybe the coming out process a wee bit, and just sort of see how it goes really.
So Ange isn't your, not isn't, you and Angie haven't been together that long, but clearly you've been transgendered all your life. And I know that you were married before you met. Well, not before you met, before you got together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, do you want a little bit of my background?
Yeah,
Where I came from? Well, I was married for 30 years, and after about 19 years of marriage, my husband came to me after we'd been away for a weekend. We'd had a bit of a rough patch, and he said, "I really need to tell you something. Need to clear the air. But I'm a transvestite." And he showed me what he looked like, and I went, "Oh, okay." And it obviously posed a lot of questions for me, but my main feeling at the time was, okay, this hasn't changed our relationship because this is just a different thing I know about you that I didn't know before, and it makes you a part of you. It's a part of you that makes you, you. So, and that's where I ran with it.
But did you have that feeling straight away, or
Yes.
was it something you had to come to?
No, I had that feeling straight away because he'd been, he'd never been a person who was into quite a lot of manly things. For instance, he was a mechanic, he played the drums, but he wasn't very much into football. He loved buying lingerie. So there were little clues that I'd just not picked up, and he presented as such a male figure most of the time, all of the time, that I just didn't have a clue. I did have a friend who'd had a relationship with a trans person, and one of her children was by her. So I went straight, I sought permission and said, can I speak to Alison? And he said yes. So I did a lot of talking with Alison, we just sort of, I talked it through with her. I asked loads and loads of questions, and it was a bit of a roller coaster. You know, you think, yeah, this is fine, I can cope with this, and you think, God, am I weird? Why is this okay with me? You question yourself over a period of time. After a few years, I mean, we went to big night out, we had friends round for dinner, we did lots of things together as me as myself and my partner as herself, my husband as herself. And eventually he became quite introverted again, and I sort of really realised that he quite liked having the secret. And one thing led to another, and I kind of realised that he had been experimenting. Also, my biggest fear when we first started was that when he was female, he would fancy men, and he categorically stated that he didn't. But over a period of time, he realised that he wanted to investigate further, and he needed to have that secrecy part of it. That was part of it for him. So we came to an agreement, and we said, okay, we'll have an open relationship. And he then took his female persona and explored all the avenues that you could, in all the different ways. The rules were, he was not allowed to bring it home, because we got 3 children, and that I kind of needed to know where he was, just so that he was safe. And likewise for me, you know, I could go and have relationships or intimate times with other people, and the rules were kind of the same, but it didn't work. Eventually it didn't work. Over, you know, another period of time, we kept trying. He pushed the boundaries more and more and more, and one of our children was killed, unfortunately, and we came to the conclusion that our marriage was not working, and it was mostly because of his transvestism, not transgenderism.
Just wanted to jump in there that without putting everybody into a category, being transvestite, as we all know, is completely different to being transgendered.
Mm-hmm.
And being a transvestite sometimes has a sexual, secretive, kink element to it. Not always, but sometimes. Being transgender, that's not.
No, that's very, very different.
That's a
It's not
whole.
the main driver.
No, it's a completely. I just really need to.
Yeah, and with my ex-husband, the sexual side of it was the driver.
Yeah,
absolutely was the driver. So during, you know, we used to go to places, and there was a period of time where I was a support admin on a website for partners of trans people, and through somebody that I was supporting and supporting their wife, we went to an event, and that's where I met Faye for the very first time, in the shortest miniskirt you have ever seen.
that's Faye.
I thought that.
And yeah, and that was about 10 years ago, so it's been quite a while.
It was
about 10 years ago.
It was nearly 11 years ago.
Yeah, and it was her first night out. She was like a rabbit in the headlights, and for some reason, our mutual friend Trudy, we I think you might have swapped emails somewhere along the line, and we got in touch. And if you were coming up, I lived not far from Milton Keynes, so we used to go to Big Night Out a lot. When Faye came to Big Night Out, she'd get in touch and say, I'm coming up to Big Night Out, do you want to meet up? The last time she contacted me, I said, actually, I'm not allowed to go, because my husband said that the trans thing was his, and I wasn't allowed to go to a trans event on my own. So I said, can't, but I will meet you for coffee. So we met for coffee, and things sort of evolved from that point, really, didn't they? Almost 4 years ago. Almost exactly 4 years. Actually, it was last week,
So
4 years ago.
we Thank you for that. We have known each other 7 years, and you used to store your clothes at my house. We used to go out a lot. We used to go shopping. We used to go out night clubbing and all sorts. But at that time you were married.
Yeah.
And I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I do know that you were deeply unhappy. Would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I think before I do that, I was just going to say that Ange didn't have the kind of big reveal issues with me, because the first time that we met, I was obviously Faye mode.
It was opposite reveal, really, wasn't it?
It was. the only time in like 9 years, or 6, 7 years, that she saw me in male mode was the time that we met for the coffee that you were talking about. And she actually didn't recognise me, which was kind of flattering, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So she didn't have that problem. Yeah, so I cut a long story short. Yes, I was married when I first met Bea. I'd kind of explored my feminine side on a big training exercise away from home for about 7 months in 2009. And been to various dressing services, then came back home to work and then met Bea. So I didn't come out to my wife until 2014. I'd always said to you that I would never tell her because I knew what would happen. She's quite, and no criticism, she's very black and white, she's quite religious, she's quite homophobic. So, and I have one son. So there was really only one way that was going to go if I came out at home, and that was separating.
And you didn't want to do that while your son was still at home, did you?
No, I didn't. No. What did it in the end was I had basically either came out or pretty much died, really. I mean, you just getting to the stage where, I'd had some bad kind of
I used to worry
with,
that when I didn't hear from you, I thought you topped yourself.
Yeah.
That's how it.
Yeah,
That's how bad
it was.
It
Pretty
was.
bad. Yeah, I did get very ill on a couple of occasions. Physically ill when I was at Bea's. That wasn't her cooking.
It was my cooking.
So it was pretty desperate, and I think some things sometimes the decision makes itself rather than you actually making a decision. So I did come out at home, and it was not pretty. Then we lived together for 18 months. It was absolute hell for both of us. She preempted it by preempted the separation, actual physical separation, by telling my son that I had had an affair and therefore I was moving out, which was fine. And he still doesn't know. He's off at uni. But it was absolute hell for 18 months when we were living together, and it was kind of the reaction that I expected, and possibly even worse. So we separated in 2015. But I think what this emphasises is the fact that there is a huge variety of experience within couples when people come out. So whereas Angie's was, well, okay then, this is still you, but it's a different aspect of you. My wife's reaction was, this isn't you, this isn't the person that I married. It was quite, I used to say that if I came out of home it would destroy her. It pretty much did for a while, and actually 6 years on, she's not got very far with it, to be fair. So that's been quite
But
difficult.
you went to counselling. You
I
went
did.
to the gender clinic to get help. You went to your vicar, priest.
Yeah, that was
Churchy
an
folk.
interesting one because, yeah. So I lost faith in a year after I came out, but at the time we were churchgoers. So when I came out at home, I did come out to the minister and a couple of people in the church, and ended up doing what was termed a deliverance ministry, which was kind of one of these, well, you know, if you pray hard enough and I pray over you and all the rest of it, it will make a difference, and it obviously didn't. So yeah, it was a bit of a journey. I mean, people have had worse. People have had obviously better, but everyone is different, and everyone's partner is different. Because when we used to meet up, I used to ask you all sorts of questions, because it was just like, why would this work, and how would you stay in this relationship? Because I couldn't imagine my own being like that. So it was all sorts of really personal
You
questions,
did ask lots of personal
and
questions.
And Andrew must have been thinking, God, really, what am I doing? So yeah, there was a lot of different experiences between us.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Your foot.
it is my fault.
Have a seat at the couch,
what else
please.
would
Thank
it
you very
be?
much, girls. So
I
then,
was just going to add this, because despite all of the horror story of my coming out home, the best part of it was I rang my sister-in-law. So, quick conversation, and then, well, how do you think my brother would react if I told him I was transgender? And she said, well, it wouldn't bother him at all. And they are amazing people. So we carried on talking, and then I said, I'd better tell my brother then. And she said, it's all right, he already knows. So I said, well, what do you mean he already knows? She said, well, I've just told him. And I said, well, you've been on the phone to me all of this time. She said, I wrote him a post-it note and stuck it in front of his, on his desk. And I thought, yes, one of the best coming out stories ever, sure. But they have been absolutely brilliant, and they are such amazing people.
Yeah,
So
wonderful.
there has been some support there.
Yeah.
And actually, my mother-in-law is pretty normal with me. I mean, it must have been, because she's getting on, and it was a huge blast separating, because it kind of echoed her own background. But she's just been amazing. It's never come up. The only thing she's really said to me was, I don't know why anyone would want to be a woman. We just have a rough time. So, yeah, she's been pretty good.
are your own parents alive?
No, they, they both, well, my dad died, my dad died while Faye was finding her feet around the country. So that was, that was a difficult period. So, yeah.
And then, how did you two decide you were going to get together?
Well,
Not at first sight.
well, no, it couldn't have been, because
You
you've
were
known
both
each other
married.
for a long time. Yeah. What happened was we met at Big Night Out for a coffee. And,
Sorry, the cat's...
Thanks, Bumpy.
I did misgender the cat earlier on.
Always.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that is revenge, isn't it?
Yeah. And my husband was becoming more and more oppressive, really, and not allowing me to see any of my girlfriends. I'd been in the world for nearly 10 years, and he was saying, but I don't like you seeing them. And it's like, oh, okay. And I had another friend, and I was supposed to be meeting them for lunch, and I told him in the morning, and he said, I don't want you to go. So I texted my friend and said, that's it, I can't meet you anymore for lunch or whatever, because it causes problems at home. So I'd been on the Chicks website, you know, the site, and I was taking my profile down, and I contacted Faye and said, look, I'm taking my profile down, and this is why. And we got chatting, and we carried on chatting. We were chatting on Messenger and one thing led to another, and you said, well, one of the things I remember you saying was that, well, you can always come down to me and we'll have a duvet day and we'll just watch videos because we both like films. I just, oh, that sounds really nice. And we just were chatting, and Faye said, well, let's go out for dinner. And we met halfway because there was a 70-mile distance between us. And we went out for dinner, and because we'd been chatting a lot more over this period, I mean on a daily basis, morning, night, noon and night.
Yeah.
One thing led to another, and before we left, we were in each other's arms and realised that there was something between us. So, and Faye, we met as Angie and Faye, didn't we? And we continued to meet, and things developed. And my husband was going away for a weekend, and I was supposed to be going to Cornwall, and I thought, well, Faye could come to Cornwall with me. And my daughter was working in Cornwall at the time, so I said I was going to Cornwall. And I'd packed my suitcase, and a couple of days before the weekend we were away, my husband said to me, you're not going to Cornwall. I said, what? No. There had been, I must say, prior to this, there had been occasions where he had been rooting through my phone and things and invading my personal space. And he'd been through my suitcase and seen what was packed in there. He said, you're not going to see Penny. And I went, oh, right, okay. No, I'm not going to see Penny. I am going to Cornwall, but I'm going with somebody. And he went, oh. And he said, who are you going with? So I said, well, somebody you know, Faye. And he said, oh. Well, his next question was, have you had sex? And I went, oh, no. Because at the time. And he said, well, what? You know, so are you having an affair? I said, yes, we are. So he said, oh. I said, well, and we had a discussion, and it was quite an honest discussion, and we said, you know, let's be honest with each other. We've been treading water for so long. There is nothing left in our relationship. Life is too short. We knew that. We'd lost our son. Life is too short to pretend. Should we separate? And at that point we separated. So when we actually went away together, it was with my ex-husband's knowledge. And he went away on his trip and had a wonderful time with the youngest member of the band while he was there. So
I think you've forgotten the bit where you actually told me that you told him
yeah.
in a motorway service station on the way to Cornwall when I'd actually left my car in his drive.
Oh, yeah, I remember
well, the thing was, he wasn't. We were going to be back before he was anyway, so it didn't matter whether the car was there or not. Nobody else was there. It was the safest place to park
that's
it.
True. I didn't realise that at the time.
No.
Shit.
And then we, over a period of time, he decided that it was probably more economical for me to move out because I couldn't afford the mortgage on my own, and he could with his wages. So between the June and the October when I moved out, I asked him 3 times, and I know Faye would have said she would have backed off completely if I'd have said, I want to give my marriage one more shot. But each of those 3 occasions, my husband said, no, we are not giving it another shot. So it was a mutual thing to separate. It wasn't one-sided. Faye was the catalyst, not the reason.
Mm.
So,
but I was just minded while you were talking about how before this happened, I didn't mean it that way. Before this happened, and you used to come round and you'd sit on the bed and you'd sob, and you'd be like, why can't I find a woman who loves me for me?
And you'd already found me.
I already knew.
You already knew me, yes.
I think...
You used to break my heart.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Absolutely broke my heart. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, there's got to be someone out there, because
Yeah.
you're fabulous.
You are.
Well, now you've vetted Angie.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Yes. Yeah. I know.
Well,
I didn't know there was a vetting process, but you obviously knew each other much better than we did when we first got together. So.
I just think that the part of my role, apart from it, I ask questions a lot, and most people are quite happy to tell me the answers. But from the dressing service itself, I mean, that's why I went into coaching, because people would come to see me for a dressing service and they'd be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and I'm the only person on the planet that they've told. And then that then gives you a level of trust instantly, and then because I'm the only person, it's like, right, and here's all this baggage, boom.
Yeah.
And you
Yes.
like, okay. And so we were the similar, weren't we? You know, it was like, oh my God, here's a cis woman who's going to sit here and listen to me.
Yeah.
Take the mickey.
Yeah, it's
Pick
just
out clothes.
pick out clothes.
You're much better at that than I am. I'm
Only
a rubbish woman.
Only
You're much
her
better at
trolloping
shopping.
clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't choose any clothes. I daren't. I would never get it right.
I love dressing people.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm rubbish at it. So,
But
You're
yeah,
much
so-
better shopper than Angie is.
I am.
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
a professional shopper, darling. Just ask Jenny. Yes. So yeah, it was when Faye told me, I've met someone called Angie and we're together, and I'm like, is she genetic, a cis girl, or is she a trans girl? And she goes, she's a cis girl. I'm like, oh my God! I was over the moon. I was like, got tears now. I was over the moon. I was so happy because that was your dream.
Yeah. We will.
Aww.
Yeah, so it's having a connection with somebody and finding acceptance clearly for most of us when we start out. And we didn't really particularly want this to be, this is us, this is what we've done, this is where we are, we're happy, and just sort of presenting that. It was a more general discussion about the effect that it has on relationships when
Yeah.
you come out, or actually going on from that. And part of this is about us, and we do suffer a lot before we come out, when we're in the closet. It's sometimes better after. It's often better after. It's sometimes worse for a while.
So how's your gender dysphoria changed since you've been with Ange?
Right, before I answer that one, I was just going to say, I'll just head you off from there. So obviously Philip Schofield has just come out, and everyone's amazingly happy for him.
On the surface.
On the surface. He seems to be happier. There are always two sides. So there is his wife to consider. And it hurts people in different ways. I think the big one for my wife was